years.
Yeah, it's good to see you. You gave me something right before we went on the air, and I want to let the listeners know about this before we talk about certain things that are on our minds. You gave me a box set called John Trudell, The Collection, 1983 to 1992. What is this, and can people get a hold of this?
I started out, when I started putting words with music, I started out recording cassettes, on cassette. And I made a series of 6 cassettes, Tribal Voice, which is the first one that, first recording attempt with the traditional tribal music. And then the second one was A.K.A. Graffiti Man with Jesse Ed Davis, first attempt with electric music. And then we made Heart Jump Bouquet, Jesse and I. And then But This Isn't El Salvador with Quilt Man, the Tribal Voice series. And then with Mark Shark, after Jesse died, Mark Shark and I made an album called Fables and Other Realities. And then I wrote an album of lyrics that my children recorded with Mark and Quilt, and we called it Child's Voice. And they've been on cassette, but not on CD, so what we've done is taken them and put them on CD. We didn't remix them. Everything is originally as it is. I mean, it's As It Is Productions is what we call ourselves. And but we remixed them and finally got them onto CD format. It's kind of like, you know, I've been trying this for maybe about 20 years now, so it kind of coincides with that. And it can't, the record people I'm working with, they call themselves Red Line Records. And the only way you can get it, like right now, it's a box set, but it's over the internet. And they're selling them, I don't know the selling address, but I know one exists.
Right.
And if someone went to my homepage, johntrudell.com, they can find the selling address.
There's a link to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trudell, for those that aren't familiar with John or aren't sure how to spell his last name, it's Trudell, johntrudell.com. I have been doing this program, John, for, I don't know, 16 years or something. Can you, no, nothing?
Yeah.
There's where it plugs in, there's a knob. That'll be your volume control.
All right. Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
I've been doing the show for, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 years. I have to tell you this. Of all the music I've ever played on this program, rock and roll, whatever, I have gotten head and shoulders more people asking me over the years about you and Tribal Voice. That is, when I play that, I've got it on carts. A buddy of mine loaned me the cassette years ago, and I carted up listening and looking at us and a couple of others. When I play those things, people come out, who is that? So it's exciting that you have it on CD now.
Yeah, we're really pleased that we could do it. I mean, you know, it's always a matter of economics and things because we really are almost fugitives. We're so independent, we're almost fugitives, right? The cash supply is always low. So.
Yeah. Well, you're in studio in part because I called you this past week and invited you back on the program, and you shared with me there was something a bit synchronistic about my call, that there was something on your mind that in part you wanted to talk about tonight. And it had to do with politics, not only nationally, but also here locally in California, and the governor's race, and some things that have been talked about and shared, and some of the advertising on TV via commercials, as it applies to the Indian gaming issue. So what would you like to say at the start here about that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I do have something on my mind about that because, you know, this whole political thing that's going on in California right now around recall, this whole coup. That's what it is. It's a coup. Throwing out the existing elected government and putting in a minority. See, because no matter how you cut it, whoever gets elected governor, which will probably be Schwarzenegger, because they seem to have a hands-off things on Schwarzenegger like they did on Bush. You know, and Bush was a minority elected president also. So I think it's really a coup thing happening here, and not that I particularly think, you know, Gray Davis, and when I look at the energy crisis, the whole energy thing, well, Enron, a lot of other circumstances had things to do with that. But Davis and his relationship to prison unions, and so he's not clean either, right? But they elected him, right? And so I kind of look at what's going on here, just a well-engineered coup that's taking place, and I think Schwarzenegger's the next will be the one that will replace Davis. And that just, to me, how I see it unfolding. But then in the last week or so, I've noticed that, Schwarzenegger, I don't get it. I mean, in one sense, but in another way, I guess it makes perfect sense for him. But he's launched this series of attacks against the native gaming, right? And I think it's very racial. I mean, I just look at it, it's an out-and-out racist attack, cloaked as something else. Because I find it interesting. We used to be American Indians, and then they started political correctness and started calling us Native Americans. See, but back to here now. Here you've got Arnold now, but Arnold wants to fight Indians. So Indian gaming. And I was watching the ads, and he's talking about, well, they've contributed $120 million to California political process in the last 5 years. Something to the effect that, the state gets very little in return. They don't pay taxes, like implying like everyone else does. He may even say that. And that they've been putting money into his opponents, and they've been pandering to the Indians, and vote for me, and things are going to change, right? All right, I don't play that game. This movie line stuff, yeah. Right? And I look at this talking head, and I mean, to me, when I see that, what I see in my own mind, I see what I call Nazi drippings. And I mean that literally and figuratively. Because, so I start to pay a little more attention to him. Because this attack is uncalled. Why? The Indians aren't stopping him from being governor. I mean, they're contributing however they're contributing, so, right? But they're not a threat to him. So why is he trying to play this, do this movie star He-Man action thing, that he's going to stand up to the Indians? The Indians aren't the problem, right? But I find it interesting. So he's diverting away, and really going at them on lobbying, and things of that. And I see the racism in it. And then this thing about Nazi drippings is like, if you look at how he feels towards the Latinos, the Hispanics, the Mexicans, his attitudes on certain immigration things, and are very, very negative. The deal with the women, right? And then his ability, I remember him saying that he wasn't going to, he didn't need to take money from special interests because he was rich. All right, and then so now here, so I think he spent something like as of a week ago, he'd spent like something like $13.5 million, and half of it was his, and half of it had been raised. And it's coming from land developers and speculators, and huge amounts of money from different corporate tentacles. And then he makes these interviews in the magazines, We Magazine or something, and he talks about pumping iron and gangbanging some chick in a place, and then some other place he gives these interviews about how he had a chimney. He was working as a bricklayer and had this scam where he worked with a partner, and they would damage people's chimneys so they could get work. So all this stuff coming out, and so when people start to bring it to his attention, he's saying that he's lying, that he lied. And that he had, because he was promoting. He doesn't say, I lied. He says, well, I said outrageous things, or I had to do that because I was promoting bodybuilding, I was promoting this or promoting that. And I read this in the Times, actually, in the LA Times, and I found it interesting, the slant on that, too, is because they wrote it in a way as to make it acceptable. It's like a hands-off on Schwarzenegger. Right? Because he's expressed very sexist and racist attitudes and opinions, but nobody will touch it. See, nobody really goes and looks at it. There's this charade of an election, and that all these people will go out and vote. If nobody went out and voted, if not one vote was cast, Schwarzenegger would be declared the winner. So when I'm looking at this, and I find it, I don't know, it just it pisses me off. Because things haven't gone any further than that, because when it's like, but I don't know what it is that gets to me the most, is that here's this racist doing this, or here's an electorate
Right.
that, you know.
So many people buying it.
Yeah, buying all this.
Yeah.
There's an electorate that believe all this stuff is real and that whatever's going on is in their best interest. See, so I do have to say that. I don't know which it is that gets to me the most. It's that here's this racist doing this and just doing it so blatantly, right? And because, like when he's mentioning about how much the tribes spend for political contributions, the $120 million, let's say it's that figure, and they're not paying any taxes. You know, it's time for them to bear their fair share, is what he's saying. But if you took that price that amount of money the tribes are putting into this, and you compared it next to the amount of money, let's say, that the aerospace industry has put in, or the energy companies have put in into lobbying, the number coming from the native gaming would be much less. I mean, I would guarantee they're not the largest contributors. And when you look at these big corporate entities, even the land developers and the people that are funding Schwarzenegger's campaign, you know, do they pay their fair share? If we're going to talk about taxes, you know, you know, so, and the other thing that's very racial, but the subtleties of racism as they're being employed, is on one hand, he's saying to the people of California that he won't raise taxes to the citizens of California, all right? So he's going to raise taxes on the natives, because that's basically what he's, you know. And I find, to me, it's just like, here's this. With his lying, where he's been caught lying and all of these things, I see a pattern. So when he's excusing his lying from the past, he says it's because he was promoting a product, movie, bodybuilding, something. Well, see, don't people understand? He's still lying.
Right.
And the product he's promoting now is himself. You know. But to put due where it is at, I think that he's an actor. And what he's doing is acting. Whatever's going on with the Schwarzenegger, the whole trip, it's very comparable to Bush. Right? They're not the brains of their outfit. And you can tell, and in Schwarzenegger's case, you can tell that he's not, because everything has to be scripted for him.
Yeah, even the one debate he participated in, everything, all the questions.
See, everything has to be scripted.
Yeah.
And so but if it does no more good than for me to just vent it. Because, you know, I can say it to the walls for so long, but they get tired of hearing it.
Well, I had told you when I talked to you this week that it came up on the morning show this week. Somebody called in and said how much he loves Arnold and brought up the Indian gaming issue in this commercial and said, you know, they don't even pay taxes.
Well, we don't, of course we don't pay taxes. You know, that's between us and the United States government. You know, let's get to what realities are. You cut U.S. citizens of California, you cut your deal with the U.S. government, we cut ours. And let's look at the deal that Native people cut with the U.S. government that puts us in these areas where, in areas and issues of sovereignty. Number one, about taxes. We do most of our business off the reservation. So when we buy food or anything we buy or consume, we pay taxes. If we buy gasoline, we pay taxes. So we pay taxes. All right? It's just that we don't pay a state income tax or we don't pay a federal income tax. But there's a reason to this, and these are about legal agreements. The United States of America, the United States government, signed treaty laws with various native nations. And these treaty laws are exactly that. They're laws. There's 5 types of law in America. There's constitutional law, criminal law, constitutional law, statute law. Anyway, there's 5 of them. All right? And treaty law is one of those 5 types of law. The Constitution of the United States says that the treaties between the various Indian nations and the Constitution are the supreme laws of the land and shall be held in the same abeyance. So these are laws. It's more than treaties. These are laws. These are laws. It's about laws, not ethics. It's about laws. It's not about morality. It's about laws. So the U.S. government has a legal responsibility to deal with the native people in the ways that they deal with them, respecting rights of sovereignty. This is the law. So in any situation where native people aren't paying what would be considered a tax to any state or federal government, this is something, you know, So now let's look at that part of it. Now, but let's look at the tax that the Native people did pay. In the particular state of California, Native people, their population dropped from 100,000 to less than like 20,000 people. You know, and this all happened in the state of California like within a 50-year period of time during the 1800s. The people were hunted down and rounded up. You know, they were the ones that were using slave labor to build all these missions. You know, so don't talk about taxes and what Native people, you know, and California is, I think, maybe the third or fourth largest economy in the world, taken off this land that belonged to Native people. So don't talk to us about taxes. You know, you want to talk about paying taxes, then the state of California should be paying to the Native people. They should be paying a percentage of their gross national product to the Native people for the use of the land. So all of this, so when people start screaming this out about Indians don't pay taxes, this is that mindless mass that in Arnold Schwarzenegger was created, all right, to channel to.
And out of.
Yes. See, I don't think people got it because he had a movie out called Predator. And people didn't get it who the Predator was, did they? The Predator won. Didn't they get it? The Predator, he was the Predator the whole time. And you see it in his behavior patterns now.
I was just at 7-Eleven before I came in to pick up a couple of snacks, and right on the counter, Total Recall playing cards. There he was right there.
Yeah, no, I mean, see, this is a Hollywood advertising campaign. Yeah. You know, one-liners from different movies, you know. I mean, because back to this anti-Indian commercial thing, you know, it's the way he says, I don't play that game. There's one line in there, the way he says it, right? And I don't know, it just... I don't know how to describe it. There's just a way that he says it. It's not that it's menacing. It's like something coming out of Howdy Doody, but this is a more Neanderthal howdy.
I've not seen any of the commercials, but I've heard about them, and basically the insinuation is, you know, they need to pay their fair share.
Well, the other thing is it's the frequency of that particular commercial, because that commercial has been played more excessively, at least in the L.A. area through the local L.A. channels, has been played more excessively than any other commercial for the whole week of from Monday through today, Sunday today. It was on every channel. It was played excessive amounts of times. And we're talking about a lot of money was put into this. I mean, it literally is a 21st century we're in? It really is a 21st century version of Andrew Jackson. See, he needs to fight Indians. I'm something in his psyche. He needs to fight Indians because it's still... well, he just knew off the boat, so maybe that's what it is, all right? But he needs to fight Indians, so it's like creating this whole thing. Because if you go back in American history and you look at American history up through the 1800s, one of the sure steps towards political success was to have fought Indians. See, so when I see him... So here are the Indians in their camp, out in the middle of the desert in their camp, not bothering anybody. And he's pretending he's the cavalry. You know, and I don't know what... I truly don't know... I can find no logical, reasonable explanation. All right, why? Because they didn't give him some money? That you try to Sand Creek them, you try to Wounded Knee them because they didn't give you any money? You know what I mean? Because that's basically... They're supporting the people that you're running against. I mean, there's a certain viciousness there to that. I mean, there's a certain ugliness there. It's a Nazism, and that's exactly what the hell it is. You know, and I think it might run through the old family lines. If he wants to get on Indians, then let's talk about, because, his dad was a Nazi. You know, so for his dad's generation, it was the Jews, to be a success over there. So for Arnold over here, well, it's the Indians, because the Jews here, they control the industry that props him up. But now I feel better.
Someone called the program within the last few weeks and said Cruz Bustamante's brother, cousin, nephew, something like that, runs an Indian casino.
That could be, could very well be what that would have to do.
Nothing. Yeah. I just found it interesting. Yeah. What's your thought on the whole casino issue?
Well, on the casinos, that whole issue itself, number one, gaming, what is called gaming, gambling, has always been a part of our cultures. Always has. But for our culture, we never obsessed on it, became addicted to it. It was just a part of, almost like part of a ritual, in a way. So from that end of it, I have no issue with gaming. The fact that Indian gaming exists now, and it's creating an economic base for tribes that have paid the tax. All right, and it's creating an economic base for them now. And it's creating an economic base in a way that is not desecrating their land. I mean, where they're having to put store nuclear waste on it, or cut down, tear their land up. It's creating them an economic base that's still basically fairly beneficial to the land. I mean, you get into issues of sewage and traffic and things like that, but those are things that can be resolved, right? And in the workings between the tribes and the state. So all of that looks good. The real issue on it is it depends on how the tribes use the money.
Right.
You know, it really is what it is. You know, and we live in an area here now. I mean, like, back to gaming, even in California, it was like Schwarzenegger's advisor, Pete Wilson. You know, Wilson was after them, you know? And so they just brought Arnold out, like Daddy George brought Dummy George. Here, we'll send in we'll send in these ones to fight the battles that we're still, the things that we're still after. But anyway, back to gaming. But I think with gaming, I think it depends on what the tribe does with the money, right? And to me, with the money, what I mean is like, it's like protect the culture and the way of the people, right? I think to protect that, you know, and to protect their identities. And some of these tribes are making so much money they can protect their identities and do other things. And I don't see it, you know, because I know firsthand that poverty, the oppression of poverty, and the racism of poverty, all right, can destroy a culture. I know that can happen. All right, and it brings much suffering and all the pain that goes with that. So I figure if you're going to deal with money, the other extreme, I mean, a high economic base at the other extreme, if you're going to deal with that, worst case scenario, I don't see that it can destroy the culture any worse than the extreme of poverty. So I think it's in the consciousness of, and this is decided by every individual tribe, but it's within their unit, that's their right to make the decisions how they would make them, whatever my opinion may or may not be. But to me, is if they use what they get to protect themselves and who they are, and maybe on a larger scale to help protect the other tribes too, when it comes to issues of sovereignty and certain issues when it comes to, you know, that to help protect that.
I don't know if this has any connection at all, but it's fresh on my mind. Saturday night, I saw Roger and Me. It's Michael Moore's documentary about when GM pulled their plants out of Flint, Michigan, and then the layoffs and how the city just basically went under a lot of poverty. And, you know, I just, first of all, I'd never seen it, and it really bothered me and really hit home. I think he really emphasized the point about how brutal corporations can be. You know, one moment they're there, the next moment in the name of profit, they're in Mexico or wherever, you know, for working for cheap labor. Whenever on this program immigration comes up, as it applies to, say, Mexico, I get my share of callers of people, you know, venting their viciousness about these illegals are coming over and not paying taxes, and now recently with the whole driver's license thing, and I try to reason with some of these people and say, really think about what you're talking and what you're saying here. And it's like something just goes blank, and it's the racism that our culture, it's so saturated that we.
Well, but that exists because in most. The human psyche of most people has been so beat up that it's deranged now. and these racisms that manifest out like this, in a way, they're a manifestation of self-hate. They're a manifestation of a lack of something, feeling good about oneself. So it manifests in these kinds of ways, you know, and it seemed like the programmers that program, that do the programming through civilizing, right? Well, this program is fed in a lot of people. It takes with a lot of people. So this racism, it's there. You know, these attitudes, it's fear. But in a lot of ways, I really think it's got something to do with a lack of esteem they have for themselves. See, because the excessiveness of racisms and things of this nature, the excessiveness of it means that whoever's being excessive, that they got something missing in them, and they're trying to prove to themselves that they're better, and they can't. All right, so they hate. You know, and see, and I think Nazi Drippings is riding his horse to some degree, because behind the image, there's the reality. All the public gets to see is the image. You know, because because when you have the haters taking place, they don't look like haters, but you have them there. Because I tell you, there is the undertone, it's the subtlety of hatred in things that he's saying. I watched him when he snapped at Ariana Huffington in that debate they had. And yet I could understand him being irritated by what she said, but it was just, and his comeback part for her in Terminator 2, right? You can tell, see, that there's a certain level of something in him that's just kind of out of balance with what is good, but it's by studying the words he says and the actions, and watch what happens, and just watch what's going to come in the future, because I think, see, I think Arnold's going to get elected, and he's going to take California, where California's going to go. It's kind of like be Brown and Root in Iraq. The corporations are going to come in and have a field day, because notice a part of the party line that they're putting out, all the corporations are leaving and we're losing the jobs.
Yeah.
So what kind of deals are going to get cut? I'm telling you, there's more here. I'm telling you, there's a coup going on, all right? There's some type of a coup taking place, all right? That in the end, when all this confusion and chaos that everybody's laughing at or emotionally not treating as it is theater, because it is theater now. It's just a big movie, all right? Theater, all right? And all the vote, everybody gets to play, have emotions and attitudes and opinions, but when all the theater's done, you watch. And California is going to get plundered and looted even more. Yeah, and fighting immigrants and condemning immigrants and blaming immigrants, all right? That's one way of doing the plundering and the looting, because there's a whole bunch of white people, there's a whole bunch of citizens and workers, all right, that are about to get even more messed over. So the programmers of hate need to have it. They need to have everybody hating everybody, because California is going to take a walk down that road in some manner, form, and fashion. This is going to happen, all right? I mean, in my opinion, this is what's going to happen, because it's a microcosm of Bush going to the White House. Bush went to the White House, and you look at the tax cuts for the rich. You look at how the corporate entities got away with more and more and more. I'm telling you, there are parallel things. The whole campaigns are parallel. You know, so I don't think these two things are disconnected. Yeah. I truly don't. And you know, and so we'll see what gets cut. You know, we'll see what he does when he gets in there. But I really do think that people of California don't really understand what they're allowing to happen to themselves.
My in-studio guest is John Trudell, and we're going to take a break in about 10 minutes and open the phone lines. I've asked you this question, I think, on every interview I've had you on here, and it goes along the lines of, does the root of all this get down to we don't know who we are?
Yeah, I think that's got something to do with it. I mean, we're human beings, and we don't know that anymore. I mean, as societies, as the civilized world, we don't really. The more we step off into technology, the less we know about being a human being. And I'm not saying this because I'm anti-technology, right? Because it's not that. That's not what I'm saying. But the way the technology is going, it is consuming our identity, all right? And the identity is that we are human beings. And human beings, when you look at what's going on in this society in general, in this world in general, all right, the society of the planet, when you look what's going on there, we don't behave like human beings. You know, it's like we behave like class systems or racial systems or sexist systems or ageist systems. We behave like religious systems or political systems, but we don't behave like humans anymore, because all these systems have divided the human up so much, the human, and turned the human being. All of these systems have taken the human being and divided the human being up so much, all right, that once we become citizens or we become follow whatever religious programming we're fed, or nationalistic, patriotic, economic, caste, whatever, start following all those programs, then we don't remember what it is to be a human being anymore. We don't remember, and if we don't remember what it is to be a human being, then we don't remember who we are. And if we don't remember who we are, then obviously we have how can we function coherently if we don't remember, know, and understand who we are? Then we will not be able to function coherently. Yeah, and I think I think that's a part of what's at the root of the civilizing process, is to take, because if we're incoherent meaning feel guilty, shameful, insecure, or lesser, or all the stuff, possessive, any of the extremes. We're busy
materialistic.
Busy feeling all those things, and how do we see clearly and coherently? Right. And we've been programmed from birth, so that by the time we become, actually now it's happening even quicker, it's happening at a younger age, but basically we're programmed by the time we're adults. See, we don't know we wouldn't recognize happy if it just came and was happy all over us. We wouldn't. Or we might understand joy and pleasure and things that sometimes we mistake for happy itself. And I think it's all been a deliberate programming. It's part of the civilizing process so that we can be fed off.
It's part of the mining process.
Yes, it's part of the mining process. Right. So that our energy, because when you look at the evolution of human beings from the so-called savage to the civilized, see, one of the things that made this evolution work was that the human beings, and they all were earth-related in their consciousness, right? But they had to survive on the earth and things like that. But it was when they could harness the energy of other things, when they could start to harness the energy of animals, as they harnessed the energies of plants by agriculture, right? Then they started making their leap, see, harnessing energy. But every human being is an individual unit of energy. Being is energy. So we live in a technologic civilized reality where the creators of this civilization, all right, have created the mechanisms to literally mine us, to take our energy and convert it through our confused mindsets. Take the energy of the human being and take that energy and convert it into, take the being and convert it into energy to run these systems. And I think that is what's going on. You know, I thought that for a long time.
Would you say it's a form of slavery?
It's cannibalism. It's cannibalization of the spirit. It's like, I'd say it's more than slavery. I'd say it's like cancer. It's like AIDS. But it's of the mind. All right, not of the physical. I mean, the physical, if you call the intelligence, because that's where the contamination takes place. Right. And each generation spreads it to the next generation. And the quicker the technology accelerates, the quicker the spreading, transmission of it. So now the kids get insecure about how they look when they're little girls want to look like Britney Spears, but they're only 8 or 6. You know, I mean, that means this addresses insecurities. This addresses a whole layer of things here about how one would value one's own self and recognize one's own self. So it's more of a disease. And I think that even like all these this political campaign, any political campaigns, they will create no solution to the problems. They just are the problem. Because we're looking for a cure for a disease. And the disease, whatever one would call this disease, it has infected the the human's ability to perceive reality. We need a cure for a disease, otherwise, and the cure for the disease can only come from us actively using our intelligence clearly and coherently. That's the antibiotic. That's the created immune system. If we use our intelligence clearly and coherently, and the more we can do it in numbers, all right, then we're human energy. We're using our energy for ourselves. And through that clarity and coherency, we can defend ourselves. But if we don't do that, then we will eventually evolve out of the evolutionary reality. Because as human beings, our Creator gave us our intelligence. The human beings were given intelligence to maintain their balance, to maintain their balance in the evolutionary reality. So if we use our intelligence clearly and coherently, we use our energy as human beings to contribute to the overall good of the evolutionary reality. We get to stay. If we don't use our intelligence clearly and coherently, we use it chaotically and incoherently, then we're upsetting the balance. We're using our energy to destroy, not upset, to destroy the balance of the evolutionary reality. Well, then that means we're the disease, right? So we've been given the mechanism to evolve ourselves out. You can go to this Old Testament, New Testament, all this biblical crap. You can go to all of this stuff, right? All right? But in the end, that's what it comes down to. Right? And it's obvious to me that there are those whose minds have been so distorted that they would choose that.
Right. Right.
That they would choose that in the distortion of how we perceive reality.
The one other item that comes up in my mind, and again, I haven't really thought anything specifically through as to where I want to go, but what comes up is our obsession with money. And what I mean by that is, whether it's the lottery or somehow our lives are going to be so much better off if we got more coin in our pocket and go to such lengths to get it.
The money drug.
Right, exactly.
It's heroin, right?
Yeah.
It's just a different heroin. Just a different heroin. That's all, but it again goes back to how we've been psychologically conditioned or programmed. Because what I was saying, we were mentioning earlier about racism, and this has got something to do with something lacking in the individual's own self-esteem and value, and then they project these other things because they want it's a futile chase, right, to make oneself whole. So money's just, so for some people, it's racism. Some people, they hate their wife, or they hate their life, or they hate, right? And some people, and for some people, it's money. But to some people that it's money for can include all the other groups. Right. So money's the best drug. It was the best one, right? And because in America, and this is another part of the world, but we're in America. But in America, your average human being who no longer remembers they're a human being, they're now either a citizen or a Democrat or a Republican or a Catholic or a Jew or a Presbyterian or a atheist or whatever. So they're all these things now. They're no longer remember. Being a human being isn't a part of their everyday consciousness. But in the condition that we're in now, see, money seems like medicine.
Yeah. And a follow-up to the issue of money, I think of how so many of us identify money as power.
Yeah.
And that gets into a whole nother thing about what real power is.
Yeah, no, well, money, there's a distinction between power and authority. And the illusion of power is in the middle. There's power, the illusion of power, authority. All right? I think that's kind of a little, was it the Trinity chain? I think that's that Trinity. All right? Because the reality of power is, like I was saying earlier, that if we as human beings used our intelligence clearly and coherently, which almost means like objectively, right? Observationally, right? But if we used our intelligence clearly and coherently, we can create We can create. All right? All right? With that clarity. We can create the clarities that we're seeking that through our thinking process. If we use our intelligence with clarity and coherency. But we spend too much time not understanding that. But the unfortunate part is because that's really what power is for us as human beings, clear and coherent use of our intelligence. That's really what it is. Now, if you take, then another form that's recognized and called power, all right, but this is an illusion of power. It's mutated power. So all right, and as like electrical energy. All right, you can create electrical energy out of oil, out of uranium, out of water. You can create electrical energy out of anything, and they call that power. But it is, but it isn't. It's a mutated power because it's only it's one. All right, because it isn't the totality of power. Or political systems. We're told political systems represent power. All right, or religion represents power, and money's the main, but money's the common denominator to all the other programming. Again, money's right, the common thread, right? So we're told that money will make us powerful, but that's not true, because I've seen people with money that I know they are not powerful. They may be ruthless, they may be kind, they may be arrogant, all right, but that doesn't. But I don't see them as being powerful. But what their money gives them is their money gives them access to authority. All right, and that distinction. But money does not make us powerful. It's clear and coherent use of our intelligence. We were born. We entered into this reality, all right, with the mechanism of our own power. And there's nothing man has ever created that's going to give that to us. Because
it's innate.
That's right. It's innate. But we've been through centuries of a civilizing process here to make us not understand that. Because with power, with your fears and doubts and insecurities, how bad can you make yourself feel?
Yeah.
That's power. All right? But using our intelligence to manifest our fears, doubts, and insecurities, and that makes us feel bad, and depending on how bad we can make ourselves feel doing that, but anyway, that's power. But we could just as easily, we have the ability, we could just as easily use our intelligence with clarity, as much clarity and coherency as we can, and make ourselves feel better. We can however bad we can make ourselves feel, we can make ourselves feel equally good. And not only that, we are the ones that decide how often, how that ride's going to be. We don't understand that
Right.
Because we don't think about it.
And plus, we've learned to play victims.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's well, on one hand, we didn't learn how to play it. We were victimized. We are victims.
Indeed.
But on another hand, we've learned how to rationalize to participating in reality from the perception of being a victim. Right. Rather than hey, something not right here. Think about this. Make it better. We don't look at it that way. Because a part of the programming is we emotionally react more than we coherently and clearly think. Right? So when we get faced with or confronted with a situation, I think there are times when we emotionally react, when we should think and then act. But I think most of the things we do in our life, we emotionally react because it's the habit now. Right? And I, well, why don't people see it? Here's like they're being marginalized with one-liners, a hook. Into marginalized. What I mean by being marginalized is it's all it takes is that one line or that hook, and then now you're a believer. Well, see, now you've become marginalized as a human being because you became a believer.
I don't know why, but what pops into my head is I think of the Middle East situations and the slogan, support our troops. Next thing you know, if you somehow have disagreement or have issue with the war, what comes up is, well, you don't support the troops? Like this one Madison Avenue line that comes up.
Well, yeah. All right, let's... I'll try not to get lost on this, but I think that we have to accept the reality. We have to accept the reality that this basically is a totalitarian state, but it's just it's in a disguised form. You know, I was reading this Noam Chomsky. I can't remember the name of the book, but I know it was a thin book, so I need to find it again, because he was saying something in there about that when you get back to the real definition of democracy, the real definition of democracy has got nothing to do with the masses ruling. No, it's got those who are more, basically it was implying superior, entitled, the ones that were entitled. Democracy is about the decisions being made by the entitled. So, well, that's just another way of saying totalitarianism. It's just a matter of to what degree does the totalitarian manifest his activities. Is this coherent?
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. And in the totalitarian state that has been America, from its behavior against the native people and the usings of the European people to create this big corporate, this whole controlling system, right? They've had to lessen the totalitarianism at times. So they had to give you the right to vote. They had to do certain things. Otherwise, you weren't going to go kill Indians for them if you didn't have something to come to you, you know, so land and the vote. That was good enough for the Europeans, right? And then they came in here and then they spread out over Americanism. That's totalitarianism, right? Yeah, blacks are enslaved and women got no voice. That's totalitarianism. It's just the forms that it has taken at that time, right? I mean, it's right. And then as time passes and the blacks get to vote and the women get to vote, and you know, and every man gets to have the American dream and all that, and then right, and it works fine. It worked fine for them, right? But now, I think that there truly is something to see. The 1,000-year Reich thing that we've been dismissed into our minds that was Hitler and a bunch of violent, crazy nuts, right? But I think that 1,000-year Reich thing is very real. I think, and as far as Hitler and them being a bunch of violent, crazy nuts, which I think they were, but I also think, well, you know, IBM made it Hitler could not have killed all the Jews that he killed without IBM's participation. Because IBM created the punch card, some of the first computer stuff. And they kept a factory of it running in Germany throughout, before the war and during the war. All right? And the punch card made it possible for the Nazis to go through all of the records, because they've been keeping records through marriages and who was who, births, all right, for centuries. So it enabled Hitler, or the Nazis, it enabled them to find who the Jews were right down to like 1/32nd and prioritize the hit list. See, the Jews couldn't hide. IBM did this. All right? George Bush's his grandfather, Prescott, one of them, a Walker or a, right? I get confused because it's so blue, right? All that bloodletting. But anyway, they were very heavily into the eugenics movement, which is basically about the superior people have the right to dispose of the inferior people, basically. All right? I mean, there were many people in California that were sterilized. I mean, many people were in California were sterilized because they were mentally slow, or they might be some women because they just had too many babies and they were so they were the lesser beings. It was okay to, you know. So and things like the FBI worked with Interpol right up until after the war was declared. And Interpol had been taken over and dominated by the Nazis from 1938 on. Henry Ford was a supporter. So yeah, well, see, so so somebody propped Hitler up. Somebody armed him. Germany had been beat. They had been whipped after World War I, man. And then they rechanged the value of the gold. So this was, and Germany already had these heavy reparations to pay. And then when the gold got revalued, then it had an economic effect, which made their reparations be even more because of the way it affected the value of the dollar. And so out of this, Hitler builds this army and does it in less than 20 years. And creates havoc on the world. Well, who helped him do this? Because he was being punished. He had the sanctions on him, right? Right? Let's just call it that way, sanctions. See, so that assistance had to have come from somewhere. And when you Bayer Aspirin, they were heavily involved. Not the Bayer Aspirin, but the Bayer Company. So there are a number of American corporations that really were dirty in working with Hitler. And when they had to get out, then subsidiaries were created. And then and then you look after that, and then after they lost the Nazis lost the war, you have secret Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. Well, before them was the OSS. So when the OSS is now metamorphosizing into the CIA, right? Who do they use? They use Hitler's personal Nazi intelligence units, the ones that worked for him personally. They incorporate them into the CIA to help set America's Cold War policy with the Russians. How many of these people escaped into South and Central America and all over the world? All right? I mean, and this is historically, nothing against, this is just factual, right?
Right. This is easy to check
So the Catholics helped, the Catholic Church helped it to happen out of Europe. Helped many of these war criminals to get into South and Central America, where these little dictatorships where your Somozas and Pinochet and all these other people came from. I mean, created these little Nazi governments down there in South and Central America. America took the West, but the Allies, America took all of the Nazis' leading scientists, all of their intellectuals, and incorporated and brought them in here, incorporated it in, right? But see, and my point being is, if the Nazi way of thinking was evil, then why did they eat of that meat after they had killed that beast? If it was the beast of evilness, then they gorged themselves on its meat. So something tells me, there was something they identified with there. And so that makes me to think, well, this 1,000-year Reich stuff is that really, well, Germany was a nationalistic right. The nationalistic Nazi was created and sacrificed to further the goals of the industrial Nazi, the industrial Reich. Right? Because that World War II changed everything. The atomic age, antibiotics, computers really made a big. I mean, all the stuff. I mean, but computers were around before them, but they really made, everything changed. I mean, the leap in technology as a result of that war is quite tremendous if one understands the evolution of human beings, tribes, from the very tribal beginnings, to where we are now, and how slow technology, everything evolved. That one little gap there, I mean, it was like light years of leaping ahead. So all right, so now when we come to today, so coming in today, and I think that this totalitarian, this Nazi thing, all right, it had to allow privilege to exist in America under the way that it allowed it, because it had to, because it needed the cooperation of the workers. But now they're solidifying the 1,000-year Reich. George Bush getting appointed president, and what happened on September the 11th, 2001, these are not disconnected events. Because you have this religious Taliban, this religious extremist attacking after the American Taliban, after the American religious extremists get in office, then the other ones attack. And the bin Ladens and the Bushes got family ties and business ties that go way back. They can't find bin Laden either, right? So yeah, all this stuff going on. So anyway, I think the World Trade Organization, the General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs. So all of these things that have been happening internationally to help consolidate imports and exports, to help consolidate the corporate holdings, the corporate ability to do business globally without tariffs and taxes and high wages, without them being interfered with. So there's a thing evolving that's basically kind of just handing everything over now to that ruling class, that industrial ruling class. But in order for this to happen now, for the state to take more control, in order for that to happen, they're going to have to start taking away some of the perks that, like, some of the perks, like a good education, health care when you get old, you know, some kind of help when you're broke and you can't really make it, you know, good education, place, you know, your fair share. I think, see, all that's got to go, but, or get reduced and minimized. Give it to no more than the number of people you have to give it to. See, they don't have to give it to as many people now because their technology and their militarism and their new laws on anti-terrorism and their super patriot acts and all these things are in place now. So they can take away more from more people. And if more people object to it, then it's profitable to persecute and hunt them because it's very profitable. You put them in prison. Prisons are profitable, right?
Cheap labor.
Yeah, well, yeah, and they are because it's the fastest growing. It's one of the industries that remains constant no matter how the economy goes. Building of prisons. So yeah, of course, if you don't support the war in Iraq, yeah, the mindset is to trash us. Because look, what was that? The Dixie Chicks.
Yep.
Yeah. Was it the Clear Channel? I mean, what is the name of that channel?
Clear Channel.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, the Dixie Chicks had the audacity, and I think it was London, the one stood up and said, yeah, I'm embarrassed. He's from my home state. And the next thing you know, they're banned and censored.
Yeah, and what I found interesting on that was...
By the way, I have to say this is KLOS Los Angeles. Go ahead.
Was that, see, it was the Clear Channel. It was programmed into the public consciousness that their fans didn't like it.
Right, right.
But it wasn't their fans. Well, I mean, I don't know how their fans felt about it. But I have it. But it was the Clear Channel that kicked them off the radio stations. It only owns a zillion radio stations, so it just kicked them off the air. And I look at that as it was a way of trying to eliminate their popular support, to make sure that the world didn't see if they had any popular support. Because if they make a statement like that and the fans still like them, then that means they have popular support. So that was dangerous to the, all right, so that was dangerous to this little hierarchy I'm talking about, so through the vehicle of the Clear Channel, they just isolated them. Because after a certain period amount of time passed, they went on tour. And every show was sold out.
Right.
And they weren't really given that hard of a time. See, so yeah, see, so it was a very blatant, and they attacked Sean Penn for stating what he had to state. But see, these attacks served the effect of intimidating everybody. Then everybody just shut up. See, I mean, it's safe now to start criticizing, right? Because now the Americans are saying, hold it, we've been lied to, surprise, surprise, right? Our soldiers are dying, we're getting bogged down, it's going to cost us how much, right? But I think someone when that last budget, Bush was talking about $87 billion, I think someone ought to take the time to research exactly how much of that money, all right, will go to Halliburton and its subsidiaries. Just as a curiosity, how much goes to them and their subsidiaries?
We need to take a break. I just pulled something off this one website before we went on the air about Cheney's involvement with Halliburton, and he's still getting cash from them.
Yeah.
You talk about conflict of interest.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's like they do what they want. There's no pretense anymore. They just lie.
Yeah.
Cheney said, no, I'm not. I got no connection to them.
Right.
Just lies. Right?
And we just take it.
Yeah, no, and everybody just takes it, and and basically has these kind of dialogues about it at the very worst, and not complain about it, right? Damn it. Right? Just sit around and complain about it but we should be concerned about that. We really should. You know, because things are more at risk now than they were 20, 30 years ago.
Let's talk maybe more about that. I also want to open the phone lines and give our listeners a chance to talk with you, and we'll talk a little bit about your music, and then we'll bid you adieu. Time's blowing by here tonight. If you would like to be on the air this morning, if you have any questions or brief comments for my in-studio guest, John Trudell, you can get through at the same numbers that are always afforded to you at 800-955-5567 or 1-800-955-KLOS. Again, any questions or comments at all for John? We'll take a few phone calls in just a few moments. You'll talk to Tracy Thakra, our program coordinator. He's the man that you speak with when you call in the program. And we'll pause and be back with more after these. My name is Frank Sontag. I do have in studio John Trudell. And John and I off the air, just in that brief commercial break, we're talking about aging and the notion of, well, I won't even say in part. We're bombarded with this idea in our culture that in every way, shape, and form, not a good thing, getting older. You know, stay young, look young, be young, all that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's a part of that, what we were talking about earlier, about to create all the distortion of our perception of reality, the confusion of being a human being. But I mean, aging is a gift, you know, and because just look at because there are many who would like to have aged that didn't get to. So I figure aging, you know, so aging is a gift, and it's like we go through our lives, you know, it's almost like to get to complete the seasons, right? I think maybe it is a gift if we really understand that. Because, you know, we get to be infants and children, and we get to be young people, and we get to be middle-aged, and we get to be old. And I think to experience that to experience our seasons, right, is a gift. But it's it's pathological. I mean, actually, the way that we are attacked psychologically, all right, to fear that. Right, rather than to embrace it and accept it, because I figure once we understand about our aging, we can learn from it. But if we're programmed to be afraid of it, then obviously we're not acknowledging it, we're fearing it. So we're not learning anything from the experience we had to get to be however old we are.
Right.
And see, and again, but it's a deliberate thing. Number one, on one level, it's a deliberate thing to get us to consume, so that we'll buy things to look not to be in denial. We'll buy all these things to be in denial, right? But it also, so it serves that purpose, but it serves the purpose of psychologically wounding us. It keeps us from thinking coherent, using our intelligence clearly and coherently. I'm telling you, there's almost everything that's done to us now, right, that comes in these attacks of negativity. On one level, it gets us to consume more, but it's not just that. It truly is psychological warfare. It's how to break down, how to break us down. Because, you know, practical reality is those who would feed off of us, right? I call them Nazis because that's to me who they are, right? But those who would feed off of us, they will use every device. They have historically, as they've been developing their controlling system, right? That the one thing that they do not want us to do is to think clearly and coherently. They don't want us to do that, because any clear and coherent, a clear, coherent thinking society would never accept this. They would never accept. They would never accept the brutality. They would never accept. And when I'm saying brutality, I mean brutality. I mean, they would never accept the brutality of psychologically beating themselves up with their fears and their doubts and insecurities, because that is its own brutality. Or the brutality that is externally manifested against others. A clear and coherent thinking people would never accept this. They would not do it, right? Because the first part of this brutality is we've been programmed to brutalize ourselves first.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we can layer it with disguises and things, but the first, it's like judgment. If you're going to judge things, then you'll always judge yourself the harshest, right? Because we're not supposed to judge. It's not, what are we doing judging it? It's so far away from who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to recognize, not judge, recognize. We're supposed to recognize. We're not supposed to judge. We're supposed to recognize. Because when we recognize ourselves. We recognize. But when we judge, then we're not recognizing because our ability to recognize is clouded and interfered with by our judging. You know, so it's about, so everything that's done to us. I mean, why do you think we have we have the educational systems that we have and the religious systems that we have? I mean, you know, because religion was basically human deity worship. Religion was basically imposed upon everybody that it took it. You know, so it's about, and that was all built around distorting, especially in the Western world. It was about, you know, that human deity worshiper, religious worshipers imposed every level of brutality because it's what had been done to them. So they imposed it as they went on out, right? And so as long as we're not seeing clearly, then we really are no problem to them, are we?
Yeah. But somewhere, and I've heard you use this particular terminology, somewhere in our DNA we still recognize, somewhere way back there.
Somewhere in our DNA we have the ability. See, let's say as human beings, we enter into this reality with abilities. I mean, that's what we have, and it manifests for us through our intelligence, the way we have intelligence, and the way we're physically constructed with hands and feet, and you know, and the way we have intelligence. So we are born who we are, right? With all the stuff we have to live in this reality, but we were born who we are, and it's there. We were born into these. We were born into these times, and these times, maybe, so we're born into these realities now, all right, where we're programmed from birth. And so so what the programming has the effect of, we're not taught. See, there's a difference between teaching, because that's about knowledge. And knowledge is about knowing and about understanding. Okay, programming is about absorbing but not understanding, right? So we're programmed to not understand, and when not understanding, you know, I mean, and when that programming, because we don't understand why we feel so bad about ourselves, or how, you know, we don't understand why whatever we would call our negativities are, how we view ourselves. We don't understand how it, but if we understood things, then everything would change. So we're programmed not to understand, to recognize or understand that we have these abilities. But we have them, every one of us. It's just really a matter of, I don't know how, I can't say, all I know is that we have the ability to activate our abilities. That's all I can't say how you get there, but I know we have the ability.
Right. You want to take some calls? We've got a bunch of people that want to talk to you.
Sure.
Okay. Put your headphones on, and we'll... maybe some folks will ask about your music, too. I've failed to even mention that you told me off the air before we started at midnight that you're in the process of putting together a new album.
Trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're working on a new CD. It's kind of slow every now and then, but we're steadily going after it, and I think maybe sometime next year.
Mm. John, you are on the air with John Trudell on KLOS.
Mr. Trudell, good morning. I'd like to ask you a question. If somebody studies enough history and is pretty current on events around the world, the prospects look fairly bleak.
Is there
a man cannot stop abusing their fellow man.
Am I supposed to be hearing somebody?
Can you hear him?
I can't hear anything.
Are you plugged in with your headset?
Yeah,
you got the volume up and everything?
Yeah, I don't have, yeah.
Well, huh. Just let me know, Frank, when he can hear me.
Yeah, no, I haven't been able to hear these things the whole time.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that
I'm still here, Frank.
Yeah, you're there. Hang on one sec.
Sure.
Trace, can you come in here? Trace is coming in. He'll help you out. Check his headset. Maybe the headphones don't even work.
I think that's the case.
Yeah. Speaking of technology.
They don't work.
Technology! How about those?
There they are. Kind of loud. Here we go.
Okay.
Wow. All right, I think we're now plugged in, John.
Yeah.
there.
Okay, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
repeat what you were saying.
Okay, Mr. Trudell, I was going to say, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If one looks at enough of history and stays current with the events happening around the globe, the prospects for man's future is very bleak. It seems we can't learn how to treat each other with love. Now, can you think of any event or phenomenon that needs to occur or can occur that will pretty much get the attention of the human race to force change?
I think that the environment will do it.
That's the exact direction I was going. I was going to ask you why not enough attention is directed at the polluting and the poisoning of our home.
Well, because everyone's everyone's got so many problems and so many distractions tossed at them. I mean, you know, this whole election thing going on in California, that's a whole, that's a whole new manufactured and created distraction, distortion problem, has this all emotion. So people get caught up in things like that. They get caught up in, how are they going to be able to pay their bills? So just getting caught up in the daily issues of survival, all right? So most people don't really think about the environment that we're in, not even aware of it. I mean, it seems like a great many people, it's almost like they don't recognize where they are, that we're on the earth and we're in this living environment. It's how our life is because we're where we are, when we are. And I think that people have been programmed so much with all the distractions that they just don't get it, that they don't understand it. And, and I do think that that the environment, because if one looks at like global warming, because that's a part of the consciousness now, global warming has been around in the past. And if one looks at the evolution of human beings on the planet, the changes in the weather have changed dramatically, right? How the people live, and many of them don't survive. This is just in our evolution as human beings. But for us, I think that what can make the change come, I think it will come out of the environment. Something will happen with just the way the earth turns, so to speak. But I do think that the possibility is there that something can happen that will make us think more clearly and coherently. And I look at things in a generational thing. So like, maybe let's see what happens over the next 2 generations and how clearly we use our coherency, right, or how respectfully we use our intelligence. See what happens over the next couple of generations, because we do have time to the natural power of people through clear and coherent use of the intelligence. We still have time to affect, all right, a good change, to make the change be good, because our power is that much. I mean, if you could just take all of as much of human consciousness as possible and use it with clarity and coherency, it's a tremendous amount of power.
John, I thank you for your call. Gary, you're on the Impact program on KLOS with John Trudell.
Hi, John. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
How come, if you know so much about the Nazi mentality and everything in the government and everything, and the people that control the government, you seem to know a lot about the people that are controlling our leaders, because you made mention to the fact that they're just pawns in the scenario. In other words, they're taking orders from someone else. Well, I was kind of wondering when you said that, if you know about that, then you must know about the New World Order. You must know about the war that we're in right now called the Third World War, and why aren't you mentioning any of that? And also, we've been in this war now, it's widely known, it's in the Revelations, that we've been in this war for over 50 years. They started it when they started the League of Nations, when the president wouldn't warn our troops before they attacked Japan, when he knew full well that he had cracked the Jap code and when they were going to attack and how they were going to attack and everything. And he had all our boys murdered to get the police state started, to get us into this this horrible Japanese war, this Second World War, that was just an evolutionary thing to the Third World War, which we were already in, but everybody's lying about it, and everybody's afraid that they're going to be taken out or something because they don't believe in God and they don't believe in heaven and they worship the devil or something. And it depends on who you serve, I guess, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, I guess. But I think the Third World War is against the poor. I think that you have World War I and World War II, and you have these wars, but I think that the Third World War is definitely against the poor, and I think that it's headed in that direction, that it's the poor who will suffer. And whatever the wars of, whether it's a war of terrorism or liberating this country or that country or whatever, it's a war against the poor. Police state stuff, and I think, because I don't quite understand what you're saying, but I think that the Third World War has been in process for a long, long time.
Gary, I thank you for the call. Al, you're on the air on KLOS with John Trudell.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Tracy, for doing your hard work in the background there. And John, boy, you're a beautiful brother for our planet. I believe, John, that we have a temporary solution. And I haven't spoke to Frank about this, but we've recently are in the process of acquiring a large amount of funds to build an educational theme park. And that educational theme park will consist primarily of showing our people here on planet Earth, what the environment is and how important it is to us. Now, on this land of 200 acres, we will have dome buildings situated throughout the park. And in those dome buildings, we will have science and technology, arts and culture, a healing center, and so on and so forth. And what will happen is the kids will be bused to this park, and they will go through each of these exhibits and acquire learning points as they learn what they should be learning. And they won't be allowed to go into that fun zone until their little credit card has acquired enough points to get in there and have their fun, the rest of their fun day at the park. But what we want to do, John, is we want to include you in the American Indian activities throughout the whole park. So I will try to get with you, I guess, via your website.
Yeah.
And you're a beautiful...
But I'm not good with credit cards, man.
No, I know, but there's some way...
I'll tell you that right
now. Bro, I know, and I've always fought with Frank on this as far as technology goes.
Yeah, well,
but,
yeah, no.
But let me just explain, just briefly. We need to record their progress, and it's just an ongoing report card for them. And in fact, it will show their strengths and weaknesses. We may have a young girl that loves math and science and wants to be a physicist. Or we might have a young boy that knows how to play piano or writes poetry or sings a song. So you do have to track their talents and their activities, and that will allow them to show their parents that they are kids that have something to contribute. It's really good, John. I think if you give us some time offline to talk about it with you, you'll agree with the overall concept.
Okay, find my website, man.
It's johntrudell.com. Al, I thank you for the call this morning. Tony, you're on the air on KLOS with John Trudell. Tony, are you with us? Maybe walked away from the phone for a second. How about Doug? Doug, you're on the air on KLOS.
Gentlemen, how you guys doing tonight?
Okay.
Good.
Hey, you have evoked so many thoughts with the way you talk and so many deep insights. And man, I've been thinking, and it's been crazy. Endorphins are like going nuts with me. My question is this: the events of 9/11 took place, and there were so many things that came out. You know, they were able to identify the terrorists, and by their DNA samples and all this hoopla.
Found their passports.
Yeah, well, it just seems, how are they able to do that so easily? But my question is, deep down inside, I thought that maybe our government might have perpetuated this attack, one, to kind of close down the lid a little bit on American rights, and kind of take away, individual freedom so we can start mapping people and pretty much like low-jacking them. My question to you is, do you think that that is possible, that our government would be capable of something like that?
Well, when Kennedy and Eisenhower, when Eisenhower was leaving, let me think about this. Around the time of Kennedy Eisenhower, yes, it was during that period of time, the Joint Chiefs of Staff came up with a plan called, I think it was Operation Northwoods. But that plan, and this was about Cuba. Joint Chiefs of Staff, not some sub-agency, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, came up with this plan where they wanted to wage a war of terrorism against American citizens and blame it on the Cubans, so that they would have a justification to go to war with Cuba. And Kennedy ended up nixing this, right? It didn't really go anywhere, so it ended up becoming the Bay of Pigs thing later. But this idea came out of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and it was passed on. Now, so let's jump up another 40 years, all right, into the year 2000. The same plan, it was just a little different terminology, but they wanted to commit these acts of terrorism against American citizens, to do it to the Cubans. So then now you come back up here to the year 2001, when 9/11 actually did happen. Minimally, the Americans allowed it to happen. Someone connected to America that was in a position to have prevented it from happening allowed it to happen. Minimally, they allowed it to happen. All right, and I think what makes this a little more obvious is the fact that the Bush administration has classified a great amount of information and won't give it over to any investigation about 9/11. It just disappears, or they're fighting it, and these investigative committees aren't getting it. So obviously there's something they want hidden. And we're being told, well, it's maybe about FBI or intelligence agencies miscues, or, we're on one hand, we're being programmed with, well, it's got to show how inept the intelligence agencies are and this and that. But maybe what it also shows is that this truly could have been prevented. And that maybe it wasn't ineptness, maybe it was somebody allowed it to happen. And because I think that's what did happen. And I think that, because I was earlier talking about this Nazi state thing and all this, but to understand the implication of the World Trade Organization, excuse me, the implication of the World Trade Organization, which is there to enforce the General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs, the GATT agreement. Well, the World Trade Organization, basically the GATT agreement's got to do with expediting international exports, moving commerce, maximizing profit for the corporate entities. And there are 189 member nations to the GATT agreement. Every nation that belongs had to make the agreement that they would honor all decisions made by the World Trade Organization. And if they violate these decisions that are made regarding them, then they have to submit to trade economic sanctions from all the other member nations of GATT. Like final decisions that would be left up to the World Trade Organization, the way that it's chartered and set up, let's say some country, say down here let's say in California, you were making some product in California, but you have strict environmental standards. And somebody in Bulgaria is making the same product, but they have no environmental standards. So you can't compete with them internationally because they have no environmental standards, so they don't have that expense. So you can't compete internationally. So you complain to the World Trade Organization. And the World Trade Organization and so they're going to hear your complaint, and they can take the position of then telling Bulgaria to raise its environmental standards, or California to lower theirs. Or let's reverse it. Bulgaria can say they're operating and they're making something, but in California you can make it cheaper for whatever reason. And so if the World Trade Organization makes a state change, or a community, the state will enforce it. The federal government will make the state do it, and then the state will make the community do it. So if the World Trade Organization says, well, you've got to change your environmental laws, you've got to make them less stringent, then you have no choice. You have no choice, all right? If somebody complains because this company in Bulgaria can make this product cheaper, but the problem is because they don't have to pay their workers as much, this company has to pay the workers in California too much, well then the World Trade Organization decision makers can then say to California, well, you have to lower your wages. And you have to do it. All right, now, and these agreements were made over a period of time, and what's going on now through this war on terrorism, they're implementing the structure that it will take to enforce, all right, the decisions that are going to come in the future from the World Trade Organization. So obviously American workers, if they 10 years down the road find out, well, they can't organize anymore, they can't have unions because it goes against the economic well-being of the United States, all right, they're not going to accept that, all right? So through the war on terrorism and the Super Patriot Act, you get certain bills and legislations passed that someday they're really being passed to use against the American citizens. And if one understands and if one looks at how the Bush administration has been working towards civil liberties or constitutional rights, whatever you want to call them, all right, they've been gobbling them up and stepping in on them. So yes, no, I do think there's a deliberateness to this, and it's got to do with maximizing the profit globally and getting the American workers into line, because the American citizens are too expensive, and they are. They want health care, they want medical aid when they get old, they want school care. The American workers they want a reasonable wage. American workers are just the American workers are just too expensive when you place it on a global perspective. It costs more to maintain an American worker than it does one in Bulgaria or Asia. So that means, well, then we're just going to work. So that means they're going to have to take it away from the American worker. See, they don't need, and it's the industrial ruling class, who they are. There's an industrial ruling class. So they don't need to extend the perks to the white people and the working people of America the way that they had to before. All right, because it gets in the way of their profit. So they're realigning this thing here, but all the the Patriot Act things that have been passed, all right, by the state since 9/11, there will come a time when these will be the weapons that will be used against the American citizens that are trying to protect their jobs, their homes, their environment.
Doug, I thank you for the call this morning. We have Zach and Terry, and then we'll wrap things up here. Zach, you're on the air with John Trudell on KLOS.
Oh, hi, John. It's been such a pleasure to listen to your music and you and Frank talk. It's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
I want to say that I'm in agreement with you on your take on the California recall being a coup, and personally believe that Schwarzenegger's a mouthpiece for the likes of which brought us George Bush II. However, you did make a statement which I would respectfully like to disagree with you. Earlier you mentioned that it was the Jews industry that props up Arnold Schwarzenegger. And although it's true that, most studios were founded by Jews, and today there are many Jews in the entertainment industry, it is not a Jewish industry. Most studios are owned by major corporations like Sony, GE, Rupert Murdoch, AOL, Time Warner. And I just thought I'd just bring that up.
Yeah, okay, no, point well taken. I'll check into that.
No, I know your heart is in the right place.
Yeah, but I do have to check into it because I don't know who all sits on the boards, and I don't, there's not enough I don't know, because a lot of layering goes on at this level, I understand what you're saying, right?
And it's also curious to know, too, that even Schwarzenegger's own agency, Creative Artists Agency, has distanced itself from Schwarzenegger. They have a lot of clients who are pretty, angry that Schwarzenegger would even, I know at the outset of the recall, he stated how he had all this Hollywood support, including his own agency, but even they have distanced themselves from him. It's an interesting subject.
Well, yeah. No, it is. What is it? This is Predator 4, right? We're watching. We're in it. It's a reality TV.